The year is 1913. The United States is on the verge of change. Exciting new inventions are popping up everywhere. One of these inventions was the parcel post service, launched by the U.S. Postal Service. Finally, people could send packages through the mail. Before, you could only send letters and small items. The Postal Service had a weight limit of 4 pounds. But with parcel post, packages could weigh up to 11 pounds. This new service made life easier for people, especially in rural areas. The arrival of parcel post was a big deal. Everyone was excited to try out the new service. People could now send all sorts of things through the mail, like tools, food, and clothing. Businesses could ship their products to customers all over the country. This was revolutionary. The parcel post service connected people in a way they had never been connected before. Farmers were especially thrilled about parcel post. They could now send their fresh produce to city markets. This opened up a whole new world of opportunity for them. They could sell their goods to a wider customer base and earn more money. It was a time of great progress and innovation, and the parcel post service was at the heart of it all. Believe it or not, some people even mailed their children. It sounds strange to us now, but back then, it seemed like a good idea to some families. Life in the early 1900s was much different than it is today. People didn't have cars or airplanes, and traveling long distances was difficult and expensive. Rural families often lived far from their relatives. Train travel was too costly for many families, so they looked for alternative ways to visit loved ones or send their children to stay with family in other towns. That's where the parcel post came in. Some parents saw it as a cheap and convenient way to transport their children. It seems unbelievable now, but it happened. It's important to remember that times were different then. People had a different mindset. They trusted the postal service and believed their children would be safe in the mail. Of course, not everyone thought mailing children was a good idea. Some people thought it was dangerous and irresponsible, but for some families it seemed like the only option. They couldn't afford other forms of transportation, and they trusted the postal workers to deliver their precious cargo safely. One of the most famous cases of a mailed child is that of Charlotte May Pierstorff. In 1914, Charlotte's parents decided to send her from her home in Grangeville, Idaho, to her grandparents' house in Lewiston, Idaho, about 73 miles away. Charlotte was only 6 years old at the time. Can you imagine being 6 years old and being put in the mail? Charlotte's parents took her to the post office and wrapped her up in a blanket. They attached some stamps to her clothing and sent her on her way. The cost of mailing Charlotte was only 53 cents. That was cheaper than a train ticket at the time. The postal workers were used to delivering all sorts of unusual packages. They made sure Charlotte was safe and sound during her journey. Charlotte's story became a sensation. Newspapers across the country wrote about the parcel post baby. People were amazed by the story. It seemed like something out of a tall tale. Charlotte's journey was a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of people in the early 20th century. Rules of the mail, guidelines and regulations for sending children. It's important to clarify that there weren't any official rules or regulations for mailing children. The Postal Service never officially condoned the practice. It just sort of happened. People were experimenting with the new parcel post service, and some of them took it to extremes. However, there were some unspoken rules that people generally followed. For example, parents would usually ask a postal worker to keep an eye on their child during the journey. Sometimes children were mailed with a relative or family friend who worked for the Postal Service. This way, they would have someone to look after them along the way. And of course, children were never actually wrapped up like packages. They were usually just carried onto the train or stagecoach by a postal worker. End of an era. Postmaster General Albert S. Burleson bans mailing children. The practice of mailing children eventually came to an end. In 1915, Postmaster General Albert S. Burleson officially banned the shipping of humans through the mail. It was becoming too risky. There had been a few close calls, and the Postal Service didn't want to be held responsible for any accidents. The ban was met with mixed reactions. Some people were relieved. They had always thought mailing children was a terrible idea. Others were disappointed. They had come to rely on the parcel post as a way to transport their children. But in the end, everyone agreed that the safety of children was the most important thing. Why mail children? Exploring the social and economic factors. It's easy to judge the parents who mailed their children. We might think they were being neglectful or even abusive. But it's important to remember that they were living in a different time. Life was hard, especially for rural families. They didn't have the same resources and options that we have today. For some families, mailing their children was a matter of economic necessity. They simply couldn't afford to travel any other way. For others, it was a matter of trust. They trusted the postal service to deliver their children safely. It's hard to imagine having that level of trust in an institution today. Then and now, from parcel post to Amazon deliveries. The story of mailing children is a reminder of how much times have changed. What seemed like a good idea back then seems unthinkable today. We have so many more options for travel and communication. We can hop on a plane and be across the country in a few hours. We can video chat with loved ones anytime we want. In some ways, the parcel post was the Amazon of its day. It connected people and made their lives easier. But there's one big difference. We don't mail our children anymore. The story of mailing children is a fascinating and bizarre footnote in American history. It's a reminder that the past is a foreign country, and they did things differently there.